Yeah. All right. How are you? Is everything okay?
Yes,
on your side?
indeed.
Добрый день.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
With pleasure.
Okay, Max, so we have almost 30 students from international relations department. So it's very actual, I should say, profession, and from different year of study, actually. The majority of them, they participating online. You can see all of them on the screen, okay?
Exactly, excellent,
yes.
Excellent.
Let me give the microphone to Alessia just to introduce our audience first, and then I will introduce you, okay?
Wonderful, wonderful. And by the way, please encourage everybody to get on the camera and then kind of join the
Excellent.
conversation as they'd like.
Okay, great.
Dear guests, today is a special day, and we have a very rich program in the Regional Center for Development of Public Diplomacy and International Relations, named after Evgeny Primakov. The students of Samara University are so happy having you today. And in fact, we have two brilliant speakers, Maxa Bechesht from Switzerland, and just sitting beside me, Pavel Antipov. In the first part of our program, the famous Swiss coach, CRC academic dean Max Bechesht gives us a lecture how to create your own brand, and we all know everything about modern methods of successful brand building process and achieving career heights. And in the second part, the head of the International Educational Center Optimus Study, Pavel Antipov, will tell us about the current online master's programs abroad.
So once again, Max, thank you so much for your time. I can imagine how busy is your schedule. And now, please meet Maxa Bechesht, coach, global expert in international education, and dean at Caesar's College, which is one of the top hospitality management school. Please welcome Max.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's dzień dobry, everybody. I hope you're all well. Cocktail, everyone across the university and everybody who's joining here. Always a pleasure to connect to the wonderful people over there. And as Pavel wonderfully said, today the idea is to talk about personal branding a little bit and connect it to business success. Now, I heard that many of you possibly are also connected to international relations and all that. And allow me, before I even start, allow me to say that what we're talking about today, the personal branding, will connect it a little bit to hospitality. And for me personally, if you're talking about international relationships and relations and being able to be powerful and influential in your communication, hospitality and using the art of hospitality is absolutely a very essential part of it. I think everybody has access to the chat function. Please feel free to pose any questions or any comments you might have on the chat. I'll try to have a look at it. In the meantime, dear Pavel and the team, feel free to jump in if you see a specific question coming up, etc. While we're covering this, so that we make it kind of an interactive and engaging session as we go on. And if I may, I'll just simply start sharing my slides as well. Do you see them?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Wonderful,
excellent.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bob. All right, so let's just simply go into it. Personal brand, connecting it to success in business and possibly also life. And that's me. We don't need to talk about that anymore, but allow me to start away and ask you a simple question, which you are welcome to answer in the chat if you like to. If I simply would show you this watch and say, well, here is the watch, what would you be able to say about its value and brand and everything? Well, as you see, it's unbranded, it's not saying much, and unless you exactly know the shape of it, you can't say much about it. It could be a cheap version of a watch, very simple. It could also end up being an exact perfect gold and very high end without us ever knowing. But if I were to show you this watch, which obviously on its looks, it looks a bit more sophisticated, but also add to it this mention that, hey, This is a Swiss watch. Then I would ask you in the audience, or the Pavel or anybody, would you expect this watch to have more of a brand recognition and value versus the other one simply by being a Swiss watch? And I would hope that the answer would be a resounding duh. This is expected to be a more expensive and premium watch because it's a Swiss watch, right? And not only because it's Swiss, but it got this brand and image in it. And I haven't even shared anything about it, but it has a meaning. And this is exactly the point of branding, and particularly personal branding, because it connects to something that builds up an expectation of what to expect, and so an image of someone or something. And so let's focus on that. These are the topics that I'd like to quickly cover along our brief session. What is a brand? We just look at a simple dictionary explanation. What is a personal brand? Connected a little bit to Cesar Ritz, who's a very strong personal brand within the world of hospitality and hotels, even though he lived more than 100 years ago. And then connected to a few things that you personally can do, no matter what level of education you are and what level of professionalism and career you have right now, while you are able to enhance your personal brand so that you are more strong in your ability to communicate, in your ability to tell your story, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's the idea of looking at it, and also looking at hospitality and see how hospitality possibly could help you in that quest. Now, if we look at brands, then I would ask you, what is a brand? Well, you also certainly have a favorite brand, right? Could I ask you to put into the chat possibly some of your personal brands, name of the personal favorite brands that you might have? It could be in any category: sports, cars, luxury, whatever, etc. Feel free to put in the chat some of the brands that you know and you like and appreciate and you're aware of. And let's see where we get, if we get any comments on that. Otherwise, I'm going to come back to you and ask. IKEA, thank you for that. H&M, and it's very funny to see two Swedish brands, because obviously I am actually from Sweden, so it's nice to see two Swedish brands. Saucony, I don't know, but you see, every single one of these brands has a meaning to you, whether positive or not, or your favorite in whichever category. For some reason, you remember and you care to mention them, and that is very interesting. And if I go further, let's look at a dictionary definition of a brand. It's a type of product made by a particular company. Obviously, you could say, if you're looking at physical brands and then corporate brands, and it's a particular type of something or way of doing something. And if you go further and look at what an image could be explained as, it's a picture in your mind or an idea of how someone or something is. So it's important, the idea of how someone or something is, and the way that something or someone is thought of by other people. And this is where it gets interesting in terms of personal brand. All right. So let's look at a few of them. We mentioned, I was asking you about Swiss watches, right? So what comes into mind when we say Switzerland as a whole? Everybody has an image of, especially Switzerland. Most people have always heard about Switzerland. And if I would ask you in the audience to say a few things that connects to Switzerland with you, what would come in mind? Few important, famous things that you would think of. Yes, I was thinking somebody would say immediately chocolate. What else? Quality, stability, maybe the watches, cheese. Yes, of course, Julia. Anything else? Maybe the mountains and the beautiful sceneries, etc., etc. But somebody said good quality. Now that is very interesting, right? Languages, exactly. It's got multiple languages. This is actually one of the few countries where you say, hey, I speak 8 languages. They're like, okay, so what? So that's kind of interesting. But it is a country that over the years, over the decades, has managed to put its own image out there. And again, this is coming from somebody who's not a Swiss person, but I've seen, and I really respect the way the Swiss have, over the decades, been able to build a truly powerful brand and image of their country in a way that when you see something saying Swiss made, you wouldn't expect it to be something cheap and very affordable. You immediately, generally, would expect it to be something more premium and of quality. In fact, it's very hard to get a product and to put that Swiss made label on a product because of exactly that. And so Switzerland, that used to be a normal, just a basic poor farming country in the middle of Europe, over the decades and years, at some point they sat down somewhere in Switzerland and said, well, we want our country to become a truly premium and high-end and qualitative country, and we're going to focus on precision, accuracy, detailed and attention to detail and quality, and we're going to make this happen. And so over the decades, continuously, they delivered so much excellence that now anything that is called Swiss made has a better, higher anticipation of its value. And that is the thing. How do you then as a person manage to promote yourself in the right way and present yourself in a way that you are expected to be somebody of higher value and basically an image that is worthwhile out there? Let's go further and look at some of these Swiss brands. This is SBB, which is the local public transport of Switzerland. And SBB is a very interesting case because they are one of the most accurate in terms of being on time with any means of transportation. They use obviously mostly train system, but they are extremely accurate with arriving on time and estimating their schedule. The funny thing is that if you just cross the borders of Switzerland into France, into Germany, into Italy, you would have their train systems, which is often much more, not reliable, much more unreliable, much more late and with delays, etc. And sometimes the Swiss get impacted by that too. But here is what SBB does. They try to make sure that every single time they're absolutely perfectly on time. And if they are not, they acknowledge that very clearly. So if a train here in Switzerland is even 2 minutes late, it will be announced and they will say, ladies and gentlemen, we are sorry for the delay. We will have a 2-minute delay. All you have to do these days is to, funny enough, walk over or drive over to travel over to the German side in Germany, and you would have Deutsche Bahn, the Swiss rail system, and they could be 10, 15, 20 minutes late, and they're just like, well, we're late, and you should be happy there is a train in the first place. And that is a funny thing, that it's been changing so much that the Swiss have that focus on that detail and want to continuously promise excellence, even though they're not perfect, and there's no such thing as perfect. Now, we talked about watches at the beginning, right? Anybody recognizing this watch brand? I think everybody says, duh, we know what this is. Yes, a Rolex, right? Now, if we were to talk about a business case and we will talk about a business strategy, and we would discuss what if we would create a watch brand or any kind of business where our product, we want it to be super premium and luxurious, and we want to charge a lot of money for it because we like margin and we want to make a lot of margin and profits on our product. We want to make it premium, but at the same time, we want to mass produce it. So we want to produce as much as possible so we can sell as much as possible. Usually, if I were asked, does that make strategic sense? You would say, well, if we want this product to be exclusive and unique and luxurious, then it doesn't really make sense to mass produce it, because then you have too many of it and too much of it, and the price would go down. It doesn't make sense. But there are unique brands out there that are able to do that and get away with it. That is why I'm showing you this specific watch. Everybody knows Rolex, all right? And if I would ask you, what do you associate with Rolex? You might say luxury and achievement and success or whatever. And maybe it's considered an old brand now, but still today, a Rolex watch is one of the watches on the planet that keeps its value the best, even when it's old. And sometimes a lot of them increase in value over time. Why is that? Well, they tell their story of their brand and image, and they connect it and promote it in such a beautiful way that decade after decade, Rolex is still considered as one of the most prestigious Swiss luxury watches, even though it's not the most prestigious, right? And here's the funny comparison. If I were to show you, and I'm very much in favor of beautiful Swiss watches and luxury watches. Here is an example. I show you here another watch, which is a Swiss watch. And usually behind the Swiss watches, if you look at the back of it, now I'm not entirely sure you're able to see this. You see this? The back of the watch here? Right. There is an engraving here. There is something, you know, mentioned in the brand. There's a bit of a storytelling there, and it describes itself a little bit, right? Have you ever, maybe some of you sitting there around the country there, maybe some of you are wearing a Rolex. If you take off your Rolex and you look behind it and you go, what is there? You know what you see? Absolutely nothing. It's just a blank piece of metal. And you're wondering, well, why? If this is such a luxurious premium watch, why doesn't it have anything in the back of it? Well, here's the reason. Rolex watches are in fact mass produced, and they don't really have time to put all this engraving and beautiful things in the back of it because it's a mass produced product. But we don't care, and we still love it, and we still pay loads of money premium for Rolex because their image and their brand is so strong. That is the question that I would like to ask you. How do you promote and present yourself in a way that you are recognized and you know, acknowledged as someone of true value in your presentation and in your standing? That is the idea of a personal brand. Now, there is a very nice description and definition of a personal brand by Brian Tracy, who's a global corporate trainer in the US. And he usually says, a personal brand is nothing but a promise, just a promise. And by the way, I would like to ask you, what is a promise in Russian? How do you say that?
Обещание. Обещание.
Obishanya.
Yes.
Was that okay? All right.
Excellent. Perfect Russian.
Spasibo. Obishanya. I see it here now. Obishanya. Very good. So nothing but a promise that if you deal and have business with me or interact with me or communicate with me, 98% of the time, you will receive a specific experience and treatment and service or product that is unique to me. And it is something I deliver 99% of the time. There might be exceptions because I'm not perfect, but most of the time, you can take away that promise from me that when you purchase my services, my consulting, my products, whatever it is, you deal with me, this is what you will get, right? That would be a very nice definition, in my opinion, of a personal brand. And so how do we then develop this? There are people like Bill Gates, like Jack Ma, the wealthiest person in China, who built up Alibaba. There's Elon Musk. These brands, these are now personal brands, even though it's their name, because their names are connected to unique businesses or ideas. Bill Gates, I assume now we don't only connect with Microsoft. Probably these years and then these days, we connect Bill Gates a lot more to vaccines. Fair enough. Jack Ma is the company of Alibaba, making payments online and business happen online. And Elon Musk, well, anything that is crazy and magical to believe in terms of going to Mars and going to space and all of a sudden introducing a car that is not really a car, but is electric and all that, and then make it work in the marketplace. Elon Musk is the guy that goes crazy as an investor, and he's into it, into creating it, right? So they have this personal promise that Elon would be, again, you will not hear something from Elon unless it's that crazy and visionary that he believes is worth mentioning. So you know what that promise is from Elon. If you look at Jack Ma, his idea is whatever he does, he focuses on making payment and business easier online. So if he promotes it, usually it's connected to that idea. All right, so what is that promise that you have? And another person that we always with pleasure mention is, of course, Mr. Cesar Ritz, who bears the name of this gorgeous school, which is part of the Swiss Education Group, and you know, in business and hospitality studies. And he, more than 100 years ago, came from a poor farming family. He was the 13th son of a family, and came up and with an obsession even though he was told early on in school that you're not going to be anything successful in the world of hospitality, he was able to work himself up and gradually, make a very magical name of his own brand and name, because he was so focused on offering incredible experiences in the world of luxury hospitality. And that is so unique, and we bear it with him. Even today, there is the Ritz Paris, the Ritz London. There is a whole group of the Ritz-Carlton family that belongs to the Marriott Corporation, and they have the legacy that he left behind. What was his promise? Well, his promise was, if you come to my establishment, to my hotels, to my restaurants, or deal with me, I will make sure that you experience something unique that you will remember for a long time, and you will have a very special treatment indeed in my hotels as a guest. And he partnered up with Auguste Escoffier, a chef, a French legendary chef, who also was very well known and became a legend later. And they together were able to create not only a great hospitality experience, but also culinary experience from the kitchen. So the flavors and the senses of the guests were absolutely, stimulated in the right way. All right, so that's Caesar Ritz. And Ritz-Carlton today says, we are ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen in the spirit of Caesar Ritz. So these are these kind of personal brands that are very interesting to look at. And again, I would like to ask you to pose your own question. What is it that I can do? What is the unique thing that I do that is something worth talking about? What is the promise that I can offer the world? All right. Something I personally believe, by the way, is that life's not about the number of breaths we take, not how long we live, but it's really truly about the moments that take our breath away. And if I were, in the room with all of you, I would ask you to raise your hand and say if you agree or not. Most people agree. But if that's the case, then we need to be very careful about the experiences we have and the dreams that we have for ourselves. And that connects to the idea of, if we are developing our careers and our journeys in life, not focusing on that special experience and moment, then we might end up like most people, because there are surveys out there around the world when they go out and ask thousands of people who have jobs, are you engaged in what you do? Do you truly love your job? And this results here should scare you, because only 13%. So what is 13% out of 10 people? It's just one person, right? And, one full person, and 3%, what is that, a shoulder or something? I don't know. So it's just 1 out of 10 say they love what they do, they love their jobs, they know that why they are getting up in the morning. But then the rest, not so much. 20% are so disengaged that if you love your job and work with them, they're going to make sure you're miserable too. Why am I connecting this to this idea? Well, because in order to have a truly accurate personal brand, you need to connect this to who you are and your unique abilities. And that is why I'd like to also share with you the idea of, for instance, the golden circle. Simon Sinek is a good writer, and he often talks about this, and this is actually his concept of, whatever you are talking about, you start with sharing with the world and telling people why you do what you do. If you want to show that promise, well, you better say why. My personal why is exactly that, because I believe that life's about those special moments, and I like to talk about it, lecture about it, lead my organization and team about it, so that people are in a position of waking up in the morning and believing that they truly are engaged in what they do, and they want to offer great experiences to others and to have great experiences themselves, connecting to hospitality. If more people would have that focus, well, I think the world would be an easier and better place altogether. So Simon Sinek says, whatever you're talking about, start with the why, instead of talking about what it is you actually do. And that connects to the idea of having a vision and a mission. Mission would be the more short-term, and the vision of a long-term perspective that connects to the why. And an example I love to use, and he uses in his storytelling, is this company. And then I am sure every single one of you recognizes this logo, Apple Corporation. And if I say Apple Corporation, who is the person that you connect with Apple Corporation? Put it down in the chat. Steve who? I'm sure someone will say Steve Jobs, duh. All right. Steve Jobs was one of the co-founders, exactly, of Apple Corporation. And he, just like the idea of Simon Sinek, he decided that, well, I'm not going to tell the world exactly what it is with what we do, but what I'm going to tell the world is why we do what we do. And he said, well, ladies and gentlemen, we are Apple Corporation, and at Apple, whatever we do it because we'd like to offer the world, our users, our customers, are a unique experience they've never experienced anywhere else. If you come and use our products and services, you will have the most unique experience ever. By the way, it so happens we make phones, TVs, watches, and all that. Who cares what it is? But if you want to have a unique experience, you come here. And based on that, he managed to make Apple as a brand one of the most valuable, still today, years after his passing and his death, still today, Apple Corporation is one of the most valuable brands in the world. And a lot of us are using these Apple phones, right? Again, if we were in the same room, I would just ask you, how many of you are having the Apple product, iPhones? And a lot of you, I'm sure. Actually, Pavel, if I look at the screen with the 8 of you sitting there, could you who have an iPhone just raise your hand? Just one?
We have one, yeah.
Wow, I am impressed. I've never seen that before. That's great. That's great. Maybe it's changing, right? But still today, Apple is that strong. And it's funny because what Steve Jobs did, he took a name of a fruit, apple, and he put it on his company, and he basically stole the name of the fruit, and he made it a huge company value, valuable brand for a company. Can you imagine how many millions of apples around the world are angry that he stole their name and just put it on his company? Just out of interest. This is branding. This is why it works, because he talked about the why. Now, what is it? A few things briefly for a couple of minutes. What you personally can do to focus on that personal brand, because we could talk about what it is for a long time, but it's more relevant for us to look at what are the things that you can do. And funny enough, I could talk about this with high school students. I could talk about this for corporate executives. I could talk about this with people who are retired, and sometimes it makes them still think, because it's so powerful once you start focusing on this. Now, there is a book called The Element, which is based on a different concept called the Ikigai, which is the idea of living a happy, meaningful life, and based on the research on people living in the part of Japan called Okinawa, the island of Okinawa, and they realized they live very long, happy lives, and they wanted to know why. And so Ken Robinson has written a book about it called The Element, and he says, well, in order for you to be in your element, to wake up in the morning and have a fulfilled life where you feel happy and successful and all in one, you need to do a brief and simple analysis. And that analysis is part of 3 questions that you should ask yourself. And it's funny because you can sit down and you can spend 10 minutes doing this, and you start already realizing that you are reflecting on your personality, on your competencies, on the skills that you have, and you can start getting somewhere, funny enough, based on this. I did this not too many years ago, very clearly, and at the age of 40 only was I able to really fine-tune what I truly wanted to do on an everyday basis, and wake up and do and deliver to the world what I do best. But I wish I could have done it much earlier and much sooner. So that's why I like to share it with you. The 3 questions are, number 1, what is it that you truly love doing on a daily basis? If you wake up in the morning and you could choose what to do, even if you had to pay for it, what is it that you would want to do? Or if they would, forget about if they would pay for you, pay you or not, what would the things be? Make a list of the things you love doing. And usually if I'm in the classroom, I ask the students and they say, well, I love sleeping. I love eating. I say, okay, harasho. What else? And then they start going, well, I love reading. I like writing poetry. Maybe I love dancing. Maybe I love softwares, computer skills, or, I love dealing with computers or writing code, or it could be public speaking, whatever it is, you make that list. The second thing you would have to look at is, what are the competencies that you have? So in other words, what are the things that you're good at? And every one of us have some things that we know we are a little bit better at that, all right? And even if you're very humble and you're sitting there and think, well, I'm not really that good at anything, if I walk around the room and talk to you and I ask the right questions, very soon we would find out some of the things that you're particularly good at. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, I'm not good at anything, I'm a generalist, if you've listened to people around you and giving you comments and compliments, sometimes it comes from people around you who tell you, listen, have you ever realized you're such a good speaker? Or have you ever realized that you write so well and accurately? Or have you ever realized, I don't know, that you manage projects so well? And then you might think, oh, I haven't thought about that. Maybe I should put that in my list of things that I do well. Because the third question goes into combining these things and understanding what is it that the world and the marketplace, my community, the society needs that I can offer by combining what I love and what I'm good at so that it becomes a service, a product, a performance art that I am truly good at and I can be continuously better at offering. If you are able to analyze yourself in this way and you can find areas that connect and overlap, then all of a sudden you're starting to be much more focused on who you are and what your personal brand could be. And you are much more able to articulate that and introduce that to the world. All right. And simply put, it could also be something that, if you have some athletes or professional athletes in the room, for instance, it could be something that you just wake up in the morning and every day you have this urge that, I don't know, I need to go swim. Maybe as a little child, you started, to swim, and every single day you wanted to swim, And that is then what you feel you need to do continuously to be successful. And maybe you then go ahead and become a professional swimmer. The people we call geniuses are often people who, on a very early age, realized, or they were pushed into it one way or another, and obsessed and focused on the things that they did best, and they actually loved it. And so over the years of practice, what happens to you if you on a daily basis focus on something you love and you're good at? Well, usually you become better and better and better. And one day maybe you wake up and you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, well, I seem to be an expert in this. And even better, maybe people around you, your customers, the people you work with, your boss, they come to you and say, you seem to be an expert in this, a maestro, and the world wants to promote you, hire you more, and ask for your services and performance. Simple as that. What is that product, service, something of value that you're able to offer based on what you're good at and what you truly also enjoy doing? And then we connect the idea of, well, if you want to present who you are, besides starting with the why, you need to be very mindful about the fact that we make a very important first impression when we meet someone or we're in front of an audience. And you'll have a few seconds only to make that first impression. And our minds works in a way that I have only three options. When I meet you, my mind is going to tell me within seconds by looking at you, even not talking to you, am I going to like this person? Am I going to dislike this person for any reason, maybe because of the way you look or dressed or whatever? Or the biggest part that usually happens when people meet somebody, they just don't care because we're so busy and distracted that I'm not going to like or dislike. I'm just going to choose to ignore most of the things you say. So what you say has to be very specific so that you truly make a first impression. And it's always good to remember this. People will not remember what you said or did necessarily, but they will always remember how you make them feel. And that is by communicating who you are, what you do, and best possible showcase that promise of who you are, hence your personal brand. That also connects to the idea of being able to be a good storyteller, right? Ever since we were children, we love sitting maybe around the campfire or with our grandparents, with our parents, with our family members who were good at telling us little stories. We love stories. That engages us. That gets us to sit down and want to hear more. That's what movies do. That's what cartoons do. That's why we read books, if it's science fiction, or and write novels, etc. Because it's intriguing. We want to see the beginning, the middle, and the end. We want to get that story. So if you want to be a strong communicator and showcase your brand, you definitely need to be able to tell your personal story in an engaging way. And believe me, you might sit there and think, well, my story is not very engaged. right? And you are wrong, because every single person is a unique journey and experience that is interesting to share if you know how to share it. All right. So I would like to pose that question to you. What is your story? Are you able to tell it within 30, 60 seconds or a minute in a way that people won't say, well, that's interesting, tell me more. I'd like to get to know more. Instead of just saying, well, I don't care, I'm busy, all right? I'm gonna go on my phone and then just check my apps. So that's the idea of it. And that connects to, if we go back to the idea of branding again and becoming memorable, if I ask you, actually, before I even show you this, if I would have asked you, do you know what a Ferrari is? Everybody would say yes. Duh. And if I would ask you, well, what is the typical color of a Ferrari? You would say what? Usually red. Now, I don't know what red is in Russian. I should have remembered that. But you would have said
Красный. Красный.
Krasny. Wow, that's a powerful word. All right. So you would say, my Ferrari is Krasny. Very good. So that, why is that? That if we hear about this car, Ferrari, then we think Krasny. That's funny. But we also think other things. We also think, well, you know, luxury. You know, that the Riven engine and the sound and it's got something special. Most of us know that Ferrari is an Italian brand, comes with that Italian stallion in there, and it's about Dolce Vita Italian Amore, right? It's got something. And even if you don't like cars, you still know what a Ferrari is. Even though you don't like watches, maybe, you still know what a Rolex is, because they've been so good at telling a story and creating an image in our minds that sticks to us. Now, if I were to ask you this, though, do you know what a McLaren is? Do you connect a McLaren to a specific color? Do you even know what kind of product it is? Not everybody necessarily would know that, especially if they're not interested in cars. McLaren is, of course, super successful in the world of Formula One and racing, and it's a super sports car. From where? Does anybody know where McLaren is from? Niet. What would you guess?
Britain?
Yes, thank you very much. But not everybody knows that, all right? I hope you were guessing and you didn't actually know it. But this is the thing. McLaren, just like Ferrari, even sometimes has much better technology. We don't care unless we love cars and are very fanatic about them, because they, over the years, have not been able to be successful in sharing their story with us. They just have not been able to transmit that image to our minds so that we know what a McLaren is when we hear it, all right? And so they're trying hard, believe me. And I used to know the global director of marketing of McLaren, and always tell him, you know, how are you telling your story? Because people are not noticing. And that is the question for you personally, in your personal brand. How do you tell your story so that you are more like that Ferrari, memorable, and people want to deal with you instead of just, who cares? All right. And so that connects to the idea that also is connected to the idea of business and leadership, and is the ability to have a focus on what you do best and your abilities, the ability to be the best in what you do and what it is you do. So you need to obsess about it once you figure that out. And the ability, most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, to truly, authentically connect to who you are. If you are trying to be somebody you are not, and you don't really connect to that, people will feel that immediately. And you can become very good at acting about it. But if it's not authentic, sooner or later, there will be somebody who's going to be much better because they do it authentically. All right. And this, for me, then connects to the world of hospitality and what we try to offer in our schools and all that, because I believe the art of hospitality is this, and that's why it connects to the personal brand. First of all, hospitality is not only about hotels and tourism. We in our schools use the idea of hotels and tourism to showcase what I call the art of hospitality, and as a whole is the concept of empathy, compassion combined with excellence. And I have my own little definition of hospitality, if I may, of the art of hospitality. And I'd like to, if I may, also share it with you here very briefly. I think it's three things, okay? Number one, hospitality, or the art of hospitality, is the way of me being able to offer you a great welcome. With a welcome, I mean guests, clients, customers, anybody around me who wants to deal with me. The way I'm out there, I'm visible, I'm promoting myself, and I'm being found and discovered, and then people coming to me, and how I welcome clients and business customers. After the welcome, well, naturally, the second step of that hospitality, the art of it, is my ability to analyze, break it into pieces of interactions, which is called touch points, and to design experiences that my customers and guests and clients, they never forget about it. They want to tell the world about it, and that they want to come back for more of it. And so that's the welcome and the experience. And if I'm successful with that, then the third pillar of hospitality is my ability to build long-lasting relationships. And you can, if you are able to do this well, you can go beyond language barriers. You can go beyond countries and all that. All of a sudden, borders don't mean anything, and people from anywhere could come together and connect through the stories and the experiences that they have. That's actually, funny enough, what happens in our campuses. And I know Julia, for instance, and Pavel know this. In any campus at any given time, we could have, well over 60 nationalities. In fact, across the groups of our schools, we have more than 100 nationalities in one go. And they don't focus on where they're from. They focus on their journey, their experience, and the idea of hospitality. And that is extremely powerful. So that's what it connects to. And I had a teacher whom I never met, but I studied a lot and really influenced my life a lot. And he would always bring up the idea. Now, I would actually like to have an orange in my hand, but he would always have this idea of being authentic. And he would compare it to the idea of showing your true colors and who you are, just like an orange. So a question I would ask and pose to you all would be, if I would give you an orange, I know how to say that in Russian, apelsin.
Correct. Apelsin. Perfect.
Yes, спасибо, because in Swedish, it's actually apelsin. And so if I were to give you an apelsin, I would say, could you squeeze the juice out of it? And you would say, well, yeah, sure. And you would squeeze the juice out of it. Then I would ask you, what would come out? And you would say, what do you mean? It's juice. I say, yeah, what kind of juice? And you would say, well, orange juice. Is it orange? And I would say, sure, fair enough. And then I would ask you, has it ever happened to you that you squeeze an orange and apple juice comes out? Or you squeeze an orange and small little bananas fall out, or pineapple juice comes out? No. And you're saying, now, you being silly, man. There is orange juice comes out. It's an orange. And that is exactly the analogy that my teacher would use, because he would say, just like an apelsin, well, he would say orange, just like an orange. When you are stressed, you are pressed, and you are expected to deliver and perform at your best level, what will come out of you in terms of performance, emotions, and everything you're able to react with will be the experiences, the emotions, and the moods, and the knowledge that you've gathered inside of you. And only that can come out as your reaction and your performance. And so you need to truly stick to the idea of what are you putting in there as your experiences, as your stories, and as your knowledge, because that's what authentically will come out whenever you are stressed to perform. And so just like the orange, we need to be very careful about how we feel that magic inside of us. And I always find that very powerful and inspiring. And so the reason this works, and the reason the hospitality works, is a simple matter of reciprocity. I'm not going to go into the depth of it, but it's the idea, and there is research behind this, that what goes around comes around. The way we treat others is the way others will treat us. There is research behind this. And it's a simple idea that no matter where in the planet we are from, in our society, we are conditioned to treat others the way that they have treated us. And that is simply the case. So if you keep treating others with authentic, passionate care and focusing on what you do best, they will feel conditioned to treat you the same way. And that's why hospitality works. Customers coming back to you all the time because they feel that you're doing it authentically. And the research behind it goes, well, yeah, in 1974, even somebody did a research of sending out more than 600 Christmas cards to people who he didn't know at all, just to see if somebody would respond to that Christmas card because they got one from him. And funny enough, he got, out of the 600 he sent out, he got more than 300 to 400 back. Every single year he tried this. And even when he stopped doing that, he was still getting letters and cards back because people would receive a card and say, who is this person? Maybe we forgot about him, or maybe, it's nice of him that he's sending this message. Maybe we should send a card back. All right. And this is what it works like. This is why things work. If you treat others the way you like to be treated, if you offer them the very best of what you have, and you make a promise in the right way, well, it will help you in business, it will help you in life. And that is exactly what we focus on within our schools, within our programs, on the business of it and the hospitality side of it, so that we develop future entrepreneurs and leaders in all our programs as much as possible, and it connects it to hands-on life experience. So in the words of Emerson, I would always say, developing your personal brand and who you truly are, I truly hope that every single one of you, no matter where you are, you do not go where the path may lead. Instead, you go where there is no path, and you leave and create your own trail, because every single one of you are unique. And the way you choose to understand that and present that to the world, it's going to make the whole wide difference in what your personal brand is and how you will be able to be an influencer out there, maybe even on social media, and influence the world and have your success. And with that, I'd like to stop sharing the slides and ask you if it all makes sense to you at all.
Max, thank you so much for your inspiring presentation.
I hope it makes sense.
All right. Dear friends, please, if you have any questions, please take an opportunity to ask Max, please.
Can I be the first? Okay, while my colleagues are preparing. Well, Max, thanks a lot for your presentation. And my question is some kind of a general question. Don't you think that the idea of personal brand is commonly misunderstood?
That's a good question, and it's absolutely true, because if you say brand and you think, well, am I going to be the next Gucci? Well, yeah, the idea of it, it could be defined in so many different ways, of course, but at the end of it, it's about who you are aspiring to be and would like to be, and how you are able to achieve that by truly showcasing what you truly are and what you're able to perform and how you are serving the world in the best possible way. And then there is also an idea of an image on our social media and how we'd like to introduce ourselves and the kind of influencer we'd like to be, et cetera, et cetera. And that is there is a difference between that. But in order to truly be successful in both senses, if you talk about, in your business or in your personal, kind of network of friends, or on social media or digitally, even digitally, the way you tell the stories, the way you share and you communicate is exactly the same concept. You need to define it. It's a very unique marketing way of doing it. And it's all connected to a promise. How do you make that promise, and how would you like it to be as a brand or as your personal brand, if that makes sense?
Thank you.
Max, I have a question.
Of course.
Concerning the academic background for master degree students. Do you have any special requirements? What kind of academic experience do the student need in order to continue the master degree at Caesaris College, for example?
Thank you for that. Now, of course, I mean, having a bachelor degree and having the right academic background and qualifications with English and all that is one thing. The second one, even more important, in my opinion, would be the willingness to have an open approach and the flexibility to actually look at an industry that we kind of focus on, but not because they necessarily want to jump into that industry. They could certainly after doing our program, but to uniquely focus on what they can learn in terms of transferable skills, in terms of actually, so if I may, a good example is in the past 2 years across the pandemic, millions of people have left what we call traditionally the hospitality industry. And they've often gone to other industries and sectors. Now, what those other industries and sectors have discovered, and they're desperately now keeping those people and professionals, is that they have transferable skills and often soft skills, emotional intelligence, the ability to master stress and to be efficient, and project management, and offering great experiences, etc. Those are being recognized and truly valued, appreciated in other sectors and industries. So somebody who's looking at a journey of taking a master and would like to do that within hospitality, entrepreneurship, and all that, would have to also take that into consideration, that this is the kind of industry and setting that I would develop my skills in. Even if my bachelor degree and my previous studies do not correspond to that, maybe even uniquely then, it is valuable for me to jump on board and get this experience of being on campus, get the theoretical experiences, and then really get out there across a good internship or a potential entry job, and across 4 to 6 months, either experience that live as a kind of a position, or write the thesis and the projects that comes with that in that setting. So I think it will broaden the horizon of whoever would be aspiring to do something like that. And of course, that goes hand in hand with the idea of having that Swiss immersion, of taking in that Swiss hospitality. This is where the hospitality education was born, and really to have that widened worldview at the same time. So it goes with that experience, and the Swiss immersion is part of that too. So I hope that kind of.
Thank you very much, Max. Any other questions, please? You can use the chat or, okay.
Of course.
So yeah, we've got one. Thank you.
My first question is how to understand that you are ready to make your own brand, and the second question, how to choose the right moment to make your brand if you don't want to destroy everything, to lose all your money, I mean, or something else.
A very good question. It's $1 million question, because if you knew exactly when to launch your brand and you knew what your brand should be and the right timing, then everybody would be successful with it. In fact, most entrepreneurs who try are not successful. And let me redefine that, because they are not initially successful if they try, a lot of them, because they don't really know exactly what they're doing, but they still try, right? So trying is that first step. You will never know exactly when the right time is. Sometimes you feel the urgency. For instance, right now we're offering, from our side, we are offering a very unique executive leadership, executive master program online to hospitality professionals. We know it's essential that we do it now, and we offer it to the market now because of what's been going on during the pandemic. People have to work very hard and they need those additional skills. So the timing for it would be exactly now, and not within 2 years' time from now, etc. So sometimes your surroundings and the world around you is indicating to you this is exactly the right time, and then you shouldn't hesitate, in my opinion. But you always have to assess the risks, because of course there's risks. I did that myself, and I did it in a very strange time back in Geneva when I started my own business, and I invested everything for having a perfect location in the heart of Geneva, with the right office. And I launched everything. In the first 6 to 9 months, I had 0 customers. And believe me, it's very expensive having an office and running a business with 0 customers. And so you need to decide, have I done the right analysis? Have I done the right, SWOT analysis, especially, in terms of what are the opportunities and weaknesses and all that? Have I tried to define it? Have I tested it with my environment? There are often a lot of people who would be able to mentor you and coach you, and you can ask to see whether what you're looking at makes sense. But then you slowly need to try to test it, and maybe sometimes you just got to go all in. Without risk, there is no reward, but the risk taking should be measured and estimated as much as you can, because you got to be careful at the end of the day, right? But you got to move on and go forward at least a little bit, inch by inch. Otherwise, you'll never make it happen. If you worry too much and you don't, you just lose time. You don't want that.
Meine Frage wäre, ob ich das auch auf Deutsch machen könnte.
Selbstverständlich.
Ja, super.
Bitte
Also
schön.
ganz, ganz lieben Dank für die Präsentation, für den Vortrag, für Inputs, die ich also ganz gerne mitnehme und also noch bearbeiten werde. Meine Frage wäre, Sie haben gesagt, diese persönliche Brandmarke, das bedeutet immer ein Versprechen. Ja? Und ich bin jetzt bei dem Punkt, also Versprechen ist für mich sehr eng mit dem Begriff Vertrauen verbunden. Ja. Und was passiert, wenn es zu Misstrauen kommt? Ja, wir kennen ganz viele Geschichten, wo Brands, verschiedene große weltweite Weltbrands misstraut wurden. Ja? Vielleicht kennen Sie solche Geschichten. Was kann man machen, wenn es dazu kommt?
Super Frage. Darf ich auf Englisch antworten?
Bitte?
Ist es okay, wenn ich auf Englisch antworte?
Ja, also ich bin wie Entschuldigung, also was Englisch betrifft, da bin ich wie ein Hund, ich kann alles verstehen. Aber dann,
ja, nee, danke alle anderen auch das mitmachen und mit verstehen zumindest. So the question was, when we said about personal brand and all that, it's a promise. Then also there's a question and a connection to it to trust and losing that trust. And a lot of brands out there, companies, corporations, strong brands sometimes, end up in a very messy situation, and they make mistakes out there, and they lose a lot of that credibility and trust with their customers. And then how do you do? And how do you do to work around that? And how do you solve that? Well, number one, that's one of the reasons why PR agencies are very successful and profitable out there. With the right PR agency and consultancy, somebody comes in and gives you a lot of ideas. But the good part is, if you have a brand, even if it's your personal brand you're talking about, it's your personal business, and maybe it's not a corporation, but if there is a promise and you are authentically and genuinely trying to deliver, if the customers and the people around you truly see that you are doing that authentically and genuinely, often they will forgive you for not being perfect, because everyone knows perfection does not exist. But if they feel that you are only doing it, sort of doing it, you're not genuine, you don't seem to care truly, that's when you really, really lose, and it's very hard for you to recover that. All right? So it happens in hospitality all the time. You're in a service situation, you deliver wrong, and they get a bad experience. Then the way you apologize, the way you try to make up to it, and all that, it's connected to how authentic you've been trying to make everything. All right? So that is very, very relevant in terms of always delivering really with what you are and being honest about it. The more honest you are, then the better you're able to actually recover when there is a crisis, where there is a scandal sometimes even, which you couldn't anticipate, and you say, oh my God, the brand is gone and it's dead and all. In fact, I was talking about Cesar Ritz. The main experience that Cesar Ritz was able to offer was to take situations where things were about to go wrong and things were missing in a restaurant or in a hotel, and he would anticipate that, and instead of just going and apologizing, he would turn things around and create a unique experience that people would instead remember and talk about. All right? So that is it. You need to also use a crisis. There's no such thing, there's not a bad opportunity to use a crisis. There's some saying around it that you can't let a good crisis go to waste. It's an opportunity to showcase who you truly are. And so, scandals and disasters in that sense that you're talking about with your promise, if you've been authentic, you will generally be able to make amends and get back and actually deliver and maybe even become better and stronger by it. Depends when you fall, how do you rise again? In which way? I hope that kind of covers your question a little bit. Danke.
Ja, ganz, ganz lieben Dank. Also das nehme ich gerne mit. Ja.
Super.
All right. Max, once again, thank you so much for your time, for your participation. We really appreciate it. And warmest regard from Samara. Take care. And hope to see you.
Is that where I have to say pожалуйста?
Пожалуйста. Yeah. Thank you. All
Thank
right.
you, everybody.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Max, thank you very much for your speech. It's very inspirational. And, we are students and we some kind of lost in our life what we can do for our future. So what advice can you give for us to focus on our qualities and what we can do best? And maybe somehow we'll find out which job is good for us. What is your offer for our future?
What I love about your question is the fact that you answered your own question in a very good way. Because the biggest problem that I see out there, and believe me, it's not just students around the world, et cetera, is the majority of the world does not know why they're doing what they're doing. They're simply getting by, they're simply having a job, they're simply having a paycheck. Oh, I need to pay my bills. And they don't really focus on what makes sense and why am I doing what I'm doing with a purpose, right? So if you make it very simple and you focus on the three questions that I posed with the element, right? The why, what do you do well, and what is your competencies? If you simply even do that basic analysis, I guarantee you won't find that answer immediately if you sit down and do those, Q&A for yourself and answer or do that analysis. But I said you have that answer within your question. You said focus. What people don't do is to focus. Focusing on your skills, focusing on what you do well, focusing on what you like to do, and focusing on, if you do this analysis of the good, loving, and then what you are able to offer in value, you focus on that on a daily basis. Maybe something comes to you and somebody tells you something, or you deliver a project and you realize, wow, I did something really well. Immediately, you put that in your analysis. Say, well, this is one of the things that is connecting to me. Are there ways that I could use this and develop this for it to become connected to my career? Or maybe it's worth a shot and starting a business on it. Is there a value proposition in it? All right. What is of value? Simply put, if you wake up every morning and you ask yourself, how may I serve? And by service, I mean, how can I create something of value for the world, for the market, for the community, that they are ready to appreciate and maybe even pay for it? Then more and more you're starting going toward the things that make sense for you. So I would say focusing on your abilities and your skills and what connects to you as a unique individual, and not categorizing yourself in terms of, oh, I am a girl based in there and this age and this category of person, this is where I'm from, I have to be this. There's no such thing. You are a great, unique individual, and you need to find out what is that uniqueness and how do I present that with the right storytelling and all that. So I would say, if I would say one word, it would be focusing on the right thing, and then constantly asking yourself the question, what are those right things? And they change over time. I hope that kind of covers your question a little bit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before we say goodbye to Max, please stay with us. Don't log out, okay? because we will continue our meeting. All right. Any other questions in chat? No?
What I also do here, dear Pavel, I'm just putting in my LinkedIn link.
Yes, please.
More than welcome to connect to anybody who's interested and is on LinkedIn and able to connect. I know it might not actually work over there too well, but I know you guys are very creative in finding.
Thank you
the
very
right
much.
answers.
All right.
Thanks so much. It's
Okay.
been a pleasure, everyone.
Once again, all the best to you. Warmest regards. Have a nice day and take care, Max. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Ага. Окей. Ребята, интересно? Интересная встреча, правда? Супер.